I'm Danielle Forte with Pop Culture Planet. Hope you're doing well today. It's so great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask some burning questions that I have about Marmalade. I absolutely love the film. It was such a fun watch.
Awesome.
So this movie was very nostalgic in the sense that it had crime, romance, and action all packed in with huge twists at the end. Did you have any inspiration from your prior films or films that you had worked on or had seen?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I would say it's there's a thin line between being an homage to something or just stealing from movies that you love. So I did a bit of both. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I love movies of like the late 80s and 90s, these big sort of pulpy, colorful, stylistic films that certainly anything that had heists in it. I love anything within the sort of Bonnie and Clyde genre, these sort of lovers on the lam, lovers on the run, people doing bad things and you're rooting for them. I always loved. So those were, there's tons of movies like Raising Arizona and True Romance and anything that Tim Burton's done, those were the sort of those were the the movies that sort of inspired me, I think, to kind of create the tone and rhythm for this.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question. So you did such a great job of allowing the audience to really connect with Baron as a character. And I know I was maybe supposed to feel bad for Otis in the end, really, but I still couldn't help but root for Baron in the end. How did you get audiences to really feel that in the end? And what did you want audiences to take after that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I've always been fascinated by this idea that like Bonnie and Clyde, right? You're like weirdly rooting for them as they're doing pretty terrible things. So I don't know. I investigated that. I went back. I watched a ton of movies. There's an older film called Gun Crazy that I really love. That they did a bit of a different twist, which I tried to jump on, which was usually it's the male who's like leading the female and being like, "Come on, sweetie, let's go rob this bank." But in that film and in my film, it's like it's led by Marmalade, right? It's led by the female character who's kind of like manipulating or taking advantage of this sort of like small town naive guy? Or is that the case? That's kind of the line that we wanted to play with is like, I wanted to let the audience sort of get ahead of the film a little bit and be like, okay, I've seen this before. And then all of a sudden flip it upside down? So part of that is, could we, like you said, keep Baron as being sort of naive and sweet, yet do we root for him and can we retain that all the way through to the end? So that was it was difficult to write and it was even harder to pull off in the actual filming of it, but a lot of that was to do with casting Joe and making sure that we were all making the same film at the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, like, how did this cast come together? Joe Keery, Camila Morrone, Aldous Hodge. Did you have them in mind when writing the characters, or were they cast after the script?
They were cast afterwards. Like I just wanted to really, I worked on the script over probably 5 years or so, just kind of chipping away at it. And I knew that I wanted to create these really rich, sort of wild characters that had a duality to them. I wanted to create characters that were like that, and some great actors could really sink their teeth into. That being said, it was quite challenging to then go, okay, I have the script. I have these very specific characters now. We need to find the performers that can really pull it off. Luckily, I had seen Joe, in the early stages of his career here, but he has such like a sweetness and a a genuineness to all of his characters that he's played, and I just immediately thought, oh God, those are the quintessential things needed for Baron. So we went to Joe, and luckily he just loved it and was looking for something like this. So we met up and just talked endlessly about different references and then ideas about what to do with his accent and how he should look and dress and walk and talk and everything. So it was just such a joy to kind of collaborate with him. With Camilla, I knew that we needed someone quite specific for Marmalade. She has to sort of lead the audience through the film in a lot of ways and pull them along as she's pulling Baron through the story as well. So when Camilla came in, she just has this kind of magnetic electric, dangerous, wildness to the character, and that's exactly what we needed. And then with Aldous, with Otis, he just like he has such an authority, I think, to his acting, and sort of he has a kind of like a cheeky sort of comic eye for everything. So the three of them combined, it's like I couldn't have been happier just watching them sort of take the characters and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, they're so talented and their chemistry was honestly great on screen. I love them together.
That's always like the unknown part, right? No matter how much you rehearse, no matter how much you're like, well, these guys are all good actors, sometimes the chemistry just doesn't happen. And luckily, the first day of shooting, I saw, Baron and Marmalade together for the first time, and I was like, oh man, we got something here. Yeah.
Yeah, did they just click instantly?
Yeah, clicked instantly.
Awesome.
It
Yeah.
was like it was Joe and Camilla got along great, but could Baron and Marmalade get along great? Like it was, you create these wild characters, they're going to work on them individually. And then if you put them together, it's like, it either works or it doesn't. And it sort of lives or dies on that. And, we were lucky and sort of like, I could see moments where it was working, and knew that, knew that the chemistry was on par.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so we know Marmalade is a figment of imagination within Baron's story to Otis. I mean, her character was so intricate throughout the film. Can you kind of go into the creation of that character specifically, like how all of her quirks, her personality, her background, how was it tied to Baron's personal life and like what was true and what wasn't?
Yeah. Oh, spoiler alert. Yeah, I mean, that's where we had a lot of fun with it. Like I had a lot of fun writing that, where it was like, okay, but it was difficult because it's this house of cards. So you pull out one piece and it all comes tumbling down, and it's kind of like, there's multiple storylines happening at once, and sort of if how much of the retelling is true or not, or what, so it was constantly detailing that and tracking that throughout the story. Then when we went to shoot, each actor and each character had very specific sort of lanes that they had to stay in, except for Joe, because he's sort of guiding this thing. He's narrating this story, right? As we find out, he's an unreliable narrator. But that was super fun for us to kind of decide, oh, we can kind of like wink at the audience here, or let's do this little thing that people will notice when they watch the movie a second time. There's a lot of like weird little Easter eggs in there. Um, but that was always the challenge with us, is like he's telling this story, how much of it is actually truthful or not. We didn't want to just tell this like wild, weird tale. It's like some of that is based in his actual experience, whatever that may be.
You've had, in my opinion, some iconic roles such as Beck and Paul Blart Mall Cop. Todd Cleary in Writing Crashers is like one of my favorites. So I was wondering, was directing always the goal for you, or like how did you move into this?
It wasn't, like I love acting so much, but I've been on so many sets over the years and worked with a wide variety of directors and actors alike. So it felt like a sort of natural progression. As I worked on the script, I was like, I think I could direct this. I think I'm the only person to direct this, because you just fall in love with the world and the characters. So it was taking little pieces of tidbits that I've learned along the way from actors and directors that I've worked with. And but it was a fascinating experience. Being on sets was very comfortable for me, but I had never seen the pre-production process or the post-production process. So it was really fascinating to kind of like learn and gain some new skills.